Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
This is our YouTube channel. Subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like.
Check out our podcast, also below in the description. Get on it now.
As someone tweeted at me the other day, good to see Raider hater John Middlecoff talking about the Raiders. It might have actually been a YouTube comment. I don't remember. But this is not an overly positive discussion because it's been a little bit of an erratic few days for the Raiders, if you want to call it that. Some might say that's an extreme way to term it. It's been weird. I think that's a kind way of putting it. To trade your third-round pick for a fourth-round pick, to give $1 million guaranteed to your third-string quarterback. I mean, Nathan Peterman better be the third stringer because Mariota's making $7 million, but he missed a week. Don't know if he's fully healthy. Haven't really gotten to see him. Might have to adjust ourselves to an under on the 3.5 week one snaps for Marcus Mariota. Peterman was making 2.5, but they converted it to $1 million in guaranteed money. But let's start with Lynn Bowden, John. He was actually drafted ahead of their other third-round wide receiver.
Yeah, and they like a lot. It's a starter.
They traded him for a fourth-round pick. We haven't even had a game.
Next year, which was their own pick.
Was their own pick. Yeah, it was their own
pick.
As
you alerted me to. So it's not like they got some extra pick.
They had traded the pick to
for
Miami.
A random linebacker a week ago, yeah.
Yeah, and they got a fifth back, I think, in that deal. And in this deal, they sent the sixth. I mean, there's picks flying all over the place.
Listen. I don't think there's any coach in the NFL that can go hotter to cold quicker than Gruden. And I think there are a lot. I mean, we see it with Kyle Shanahan. You can get in most coaches worth their salt. You can get in their doghouse. I'd say the dramatic difference, really, there are two guys that the moment you get in their doghouse, your career with that team could be over that day. Belichick, long history, right? Remember the dude who rushed for like 200 yards on Monday Night Football, showed up late on Wednesday, and he was cut by Thursday? Remember that guy like 3 or 4 years ago? The running back for New England? A random guy who was on like the front page of Sports Illustrated?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And like a week later, he was like 3 minutes late for a meeting. They cut him that day. I was like, God, that's good. Now, Belichick's usually like more black and white, right? You're late to something. You miss a plane flight. You miss a meeting. Gruden, it felt like, love this guy. Guy, he's arguably one of the best players in Kentucky history. He was the best player on a Kentucky team that had the best team in school history in the SEC. And he's clearly a talented guy. But whenever he got down, I did my own little recon. I heard it wasn't like he was transitioning positions. He was like this hybrid guy, right? He had played some quarterback. He'd played running back. They were kind of putting him as slot receivers, kind of this do-it-all guy. I was told he wasn't dumb. Like, it wasn't his problem learning the offense. I had a scout tell me, an executive, that he had a lot of character red flags coming out of college.
Scout or an executive?
He's an executive, but he's on the road
just
scout.
He's blue collar grinder,
yeah,
but also he's just white collar rich guy. Okay.
Exactly. Makes a good living, but does school calls.
Yeah.
And then there had been some rumors the character stuff wasn't great. And remember, there was a situation over the summer where a bunch of people got arrested at a home that he was at. You remember that? In Louisville,
Vaguely.
Kentucky. And there was just a weird situation. There were some drugs in the home. I think the company keeps whatever. But I would imagine over the last couple weeks, Gruden was done with this guy. They start calling around. Well, let's just say I'll just give you a high-level GM. Rick Spielman of the Vikings. Hey, Rick, this is Mike Mayock here from the Raiders. I remember bullshit with you at the Combine. We both like Lynn Bowden. We got a lot of players here. I don't think he's going to make the team. Would you be interested in trading for him? Would you take him? What would you think your response would be on that call?
Why?
Well,
why are you getting rid of him?
We just got a lot of dudes, and
that'd be my response.
Don't tell anyone. My coach is kind of crazy. It's nuts, guy. Unless he did something so egregious to just trade a guy that you haven't seen play that's clearly pretty talented that you already gave $1 million to. They gave him a signing bonus. Listen, coaches always told me, and they're right, it's easy for you, John Middlecoff, to come to Kentucky and go, hey, John, I got this guy, Lynn Bowden Jr. He's played some quarterback before. He played running back. He can catch. He fucking made Georgia and Florida. He went nuts on all these teams in the SEC. This guy's awesome. And then Gruden watched the tape. He goes, yeah, this guy is sweet. But then they go, well, if he's a character guy, you leave the room, and I'm sitting in the meeting with this guy every day. I deal with them. You don't have to fuck with them anymore. And that is very true. Like the coaches, your position coaches have to be around these guys when it's easy to go, got Antonio Brown. And then it's like the wide receiver coach is like, help me, help me, right?
Yeah.
And I have to imagine the coaches, whether it's Greg Olson, John's really active with the offensive unit, right? It's just, you're just like, what the fuck? Whatever it is. If it's late to meetings, if it's attitude, if it's, but there is, and I understand that. And I never push back on like shitheads or shitheads and they start acting bad. You do have to draw a line. But there is an element of, you just used a 3rd round pick on this guy. So your process is just like, that's something went terribly wrong.
To be fair, on both sides of the story here, we do have to read you what Mayock said on Sunday. Let me make a couple of points. Number one, it was a football decision only. Character, off the field, the kid did absolutely nothing wrong. We did all our homework on the kid. Off the field, he worked his tail off. He came to work every day. So this was completely a football decision. It had nothing to do with anything else. Quite frankly,
what's he gonna say?
I think the position change is a difficult one in any year, but it's exaggerated in a COVID with no offseason. So you're taking a kid that was a slot receiver in 18, a quarterback in 19, asking him to play running back in 20. Really, the only thing I'm going to say about it is it was my call. He was not able to play today at the level expected, and because of that, we felt like we had to move on. Again, 100% on me. Well, I'm not
saying he's completely lying there.
No, let's say it's 100% true. Okay, let's just, for the sake of an argument, say that. Does that make any of this any better? Could I argue it makes it worse? Like, it's harder to get to know somebody than it is to see as a person, right? In your 15-minute combine interview. It's harder to get to know them in that way than it is to watch the film of them on a season and go, can we use this player or not? We're going to draft him in the 3rd round. Let's say he's telling 100% the truth. I don't know that that changes anything or makes it any better. They drafted a player in the 3rd round that they just traded for a 4th-round pick in a year where it might be just as hard to identify who you like and who you don't. It might be harder.
Well, okay, you're right. Let's take him at face value. Let's say he's being completely honest, that he liked the guy and he worked his tail off. Well, like you said, you evaluated him off. You had tons of film of him playing all these positions. Wouldn't you go, let's use a year. He'll be inactive every game and work with him, right? And next year, when Corona ends and we get an off season, we'll go all in on developing this guy and see. Wouldn't you say that Rick Spielman, Howie Roseman, John Schneider would be in no rush, a talented guy that you spent all this work on, that you clearly liked enough as a talent, which I agree, he was really talented. If I was a scout and I was pushing this guy and take him at face value, been a good kid, what the fuck's the rush?
This is what I would say. I'd go, you've been in the meetings and raised your hand before and been yelled at for it, but I'd go, wait a second. We're going to trade him for a 4th. Can we get a player as good as this in the 4th round next year? Or is he a 3rd-round level talent? Because if he's a 3rd-round level talent, which maybe he's saying he's not a 3rd-round level talent, right? Maybe he's saying he's not a 3rd-round level player. We just whiffed on the pick.
Yeah, but I think the pushback from the scouts would be, how could you possibly know that in Corona times? You guys had 15 padded practices.
If there's ever any player that's a gamer, we won't know by today.
No, and if you use a 3rd-round pick on him, and listen, you're going to have guys inactive anyway, and this guy's unique enough to give you different looks in practice. Isn't this guy valuable? It's like, oh, we need a dude to run the scout team. What do you want him to do? Quarterback, receiver, running back? The guy can do it all. My pushback is that has to be a lie, because if you love the character, like let's just say he was working his ass off, like you said.
Which we know this organization cares a lot about high character, even if they're not as high ceiling guys.
You would have known, like you would have known less about the person, which you would have got to know a lot about the person over training camp, but you would have known a lot about the player, because Mayock, Gruden, film junkies. What did this guy have? An unlimited amount of film at different positions, right? He had at Kentucky on their best teams ever. You'd go, listen, this is something to work with. We don't need to rush this. The only reason a guy that you pay $1 million signing bonus to 6 months ago, that you use a 3rd-round pick and that you are willing to trade, it can't really be football related, because there's just no way to have enough football information, right? You're making drastic decisions based on limited practice time, which even coaches would think that's a little nuts, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just trying to come up with any scenario, was there a Gruden, I don't want him. Mayock, I'm telling you, this is the guy. Gruden, I don't want him. Mayock, tell you what, we'll practice with him. If you don't like him, I'll trade him before week 1.
Or how about this? John, as we go into we're in the
But
draft room,
Mayock
right?
wouldn't do that to Gruden.
Well, no, but let's just say there. But I do think Mayock, as we've said, they do have like a healthy level discussion.
Yeah.
He goes, John, we got 2 picks, right, back to back. Let me use one of them on the guy that I like. If we're going to believe Mayock, let's use one of them, and we'll take the other guy that we both like, let's say, or you like, or whatever. We got 2 picks. We can take a swing, and maybe that's the way he justified it. Again, take him at face value, and they know right away it's just not a fit. I still think, though, Guy, it would have had to just been like, is he the worst player they've ever seen to give up on a guy that fast? Like, that's pretty nuts, right? Because, like, the analogy or the scenario I did when I called you as a GM, I'm not going to – it's like, wait, you're trying to get rid of your third-round pick? It has to be a catastrophe, right? So I don't think most teams, even if they like Lynn Bowden, I wouldn't have offered anything more than like a 7th. It's like, guys, you're already giving up on this guy? That's insanity. So they got lucky that the Dolphins just had this pick that they didn't even care that much about. They already got a million picks, and it was basically the Raiders' pick. They're like, fuck it, we like this guy a little bit.
Maybe they had him as a 4th. They would have taken him in the 4th round this year, Miami.
Yeah. If they hadn't done this trade with the Dolphins for the linebacker, maybe he's kind of untradeable. Because could they trade him, be like, for a 7th round pick, or does that just look too bad? Because at least they can say we traded him for a 4th. Right. It doesn't look as bad, even though it looks
you
pretty
could trade
bad.
him for a 7th if you're going to cut him.
Yeah, and I'd say I'd have to look historically. Maybe like every couple years a 3rd rounder gets cut. Like, it's pretty rare. A 3rd rounder that year.
That year, yeah.
And that's with off season. That's with preseason games. Because you'd say the majority of 3rd rounders get a lot of preseason run, right? Like, they get to play a lot. Because sometimes it's like, damn, this guy gets a run with the 1s, but he definitely plays with the 2s. And it's like he might start game 4. I would imagine if preseason happened, Lynn Bowden, his chances of getting traded are much slimmer if he makes some sweet plays, right? Because there's no way to get Gruden to go the other way of like run for a sweet touchdown.
Preseason happens and he doesn't really play, we go, God, do they hate this guy?
But why would you not throw him out there?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, based on what just happened, maybe they wouldn't have. It's weird.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But okay, let's say you wanted to move him to running back. Well, if he played a little wide receiver, wouldn't you want to just mess around with him for a little while? To me, there's more to the story here. Something just doesn't add up, Guy.
Yeah. By the way, are you taking the under on Mariota?
Not feeling
week
good.
1?
Not feeling good about it.
I'm not feeling great. He starts a game this year. Not that I thought I've been saying this since they signed him. He's not beating Derek Carr out. He's not better than Derek, and he certainly doesn't have the experience in the system that Derek has. So it's a double whammy. Now on top of that, triple whammy, he's not fully healthy. Quadruple whammy, they just paid Nathan Peterman $1 million to, I don't know, do whatever with.
Well, I know Tafer's been writing this for a couple weeks, and I did my own little recon. I don't think it's been pretty. Clearly he's been banged up. I think he hasn't been on the field the whole time, but I think just when he's been on the field, I think it's been I think it's very safe to say if they could undo the deal, they would 100% immediately undo the deal. To me, they would have been more aggressive and like signing Jameis for $5 or $6 million or something. Like, they would not have signed Marcus Mariota because they clearly signed Marcus Mariota based on their 2015 thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it completely based on which one thing Louis Riddick taught me and just other guys in the NFL, not just him, but your draft grade, but this is something Louis hammered home a lot, and he was so right. He's like, once I hit, let's say, 3 or 4 years of film on a guy, why do we keep saying, but we had him in the 2nd round? We thought this guy was, who cares?
That's a great point.
Like, do you keep saying, like, we thought George Kittle was an undrafted free agent. Like, who gives a fuck now? George Kittle's the star, or Richard Sherman, or, Devontae Adams. Like, we didn't thought he was the right place in the 2nd round. You were wrong, right? It's like we have the information now. Mariota feels more like a mid-round pick who because he was a high pick got a huge backup contract. If Mariota had been, let's say, a 4th rounder, and that first year he got to Tennessee, he had just become their starting quarterback and had his career, he does not make $7 million this year, right? What would you say, like $2 million? Like, he would have got a job, but
maybe
he ain't getting 7. It is the pushback often from players that are later round picks that it's like they do have some validity to it. Your draft round and your pick, especially when you're a high pick, makes you extra money down the line when you turn out to not be very good, and it's very true.
Right.
Because Mariota banks $7 million. Maybe you're right. Maybe he's a fourth rounder. Maybe it's $1 million backup job and not even guaranteed. Like he had to win it. If Marcus Mariota was Marcus Haberman, is he even the backup quarterback for the Raiders?
Peterman is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, did Marcus Haberman have the career he had in Tennessee? He still, because those highs are still better than anything Peterman's done.
Yes, very true. Yes, yeah. If Marcus Haberman has the career, he does.
So,